We're going to get started. My name is Fallon Ortega. I'm the president of IEEE, and this is the Gore Career Panel and Resume Workshop. IEEE worked in collaboration with 2 other clubs for this event. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
Hello everyone, my name is Tanner Massos. I am the president of the Association for Computing Machinery, and we just are about building a community around computer scientists on campus. So thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for showing up.
Hi guys, so I'm Samantha Robbins, the president of the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. Just because it says mechanical engineers doesn't mean that we only have mechanical engineers. So if anyone wants to come build human-powered vehicles or robots that pick up things and move it around for competition, we are totally willing to have you guys help with us and go with us to eFest next year in California. So,
Awesome. Okay, that's enough about us. Here we have 6 Gore associates. If you guys want to start off by introducing yourselves really quick.
Yeah, so just go in order. I'm Greg Hahn. I've been at Gore for about 2.5 years now. I'm a quality engineer there. I got both my bachelor's and master's in engineering here at NAU. Graduated in 2016. That's pretty much it.
Cool. So my name is DJ. Graduated with my EE from NAU in 2015. Did 2 internships at Gore, so it's right around that 4.5-year mark right now. So, yeah.
I'm Jessica Randolph. I did 3 internships at Gore.
Oh, setting the bar.
So if you have any questions about internships, I also got my master's done at ASU, so if you have questions about ASU or graduate school, let me know.
Why did it take 3 internships?
Oh, electrical engineering. Because I'm awesome and they wanted me back that many times.
Ah, that's what it is. Hi, Jeff Chambers, I'm a process engineer at Gore. I graduated from NAU in 2015 with my ME. I've been at Gore for about 3.5 years now.
Hello, I'm Bray. I graduated from NAU last semester. So I've recently gone through the interview, hiring, onboarding process. So I've been working at Gore for 3 months. So yeah, I graduated mechanical engineering degree.
Good evening, Jonathan Bruce. Graduated with my bachelor's in mechanical engineering 2014. Did 3 internships during my summers during that process, and currently working as a new product development, design, and process engineer with our balloon expandable stent graphic product.
And doesn't believe in wearing the Gore
Not
t-shirt.
I was actually just doing interviewing for 6 hours today, so I'm fresh.
Okay, well, thank you all for coming. The way this is going to work is that we're going to be up here. The presidents will be sitting around, but we'll be asking them questions for probably about 30 minutes, and then we'll open up the floor, and you guys can ask questions. And that's the first hour. The second hour, we're hoping to shift to a more resume, hands-on workshop where they'll talk about like what they look for in resumes and in interviews and what they don't look for. And then you guys, we'll break up into 6 groups, and you guys can show them your resume and get real feedback on it. So, any other questions before we start? All right, thank you guys for coming.
Awkward silence begins.
So, could each of you describe your position at the company you work at so far?
Go in order again. All right, so I mainly do quality engineering. Really the 2 main focuses I guess you'll hear throughout the night are quality engineering and process engineering. So quality engineering, really I'm more about destroying the product than making it. So, we build some device to some specification, whatever, we say it's this diameter. Well, how do we know it's that diameter? So as a quality engineer, we're responsible for developing test methods to test things like, the diameter of your device or whatever spec you have. And then also, making sure that the product does what we say it does. We need to make sure it performs to all that. And it's also about being in such a heavy regulated industry. We have outside bodies like the FDA and other regulating bodies that have very strict requirements for medical devices. So as a quality engineer, you're also looking at your device and looking at things as such as ISO standards, which are very big documents that tell you what your device needs to do, and you're making sure that your device complies with those. That's kind of like the short summary of what I do for my product line as a QE.
So I'm going to take a step back before I jump in and say that I'm a PE. Gore kind of tries to look at its product or technology development in 3 different phases. We look at technology, or kind of some early feasibility. We look at new product development, and then we have commercialized manufacturing. So I'm a PE, but my focus isn't directly with manufacturing or necessarily new product development. I'm actually focused on the technology side. So growing technologies, understanding what our competitors use for technologies, and then how can I potentially use that technology and improve upon it for Gore's betterment.
So I'm also a process engineer, but I work for an MPD team, which means we're in the process of building and changing a design of a product that we want to put into commercialization. My job is to figure out how to reliably make the product.
Awesome. So like DJ was saying, the third leg of that stool is commercial manufacturing. So I am a process engineer supporting a commercial manufacturing line, where Greg tries to break the devices. I try to break the machines and fix them and make them better, as well as validating the machines. So testing the machine to make sure it does what we say it's going to do and does it well. I also do a lot of regulatory compliance work to make sure that all of our manufacturing processes, our designs, and our machines are up to snuff with the relevant standards, as Greg was talking about. But my team's a little bit different. We are actually the coatings team, so we're not directly making products. We're actually doing a coating process on the devices to improve their efficacy inside the body. Pretty fun. We work with Swedes.
Yeah, so kind of building on what Jeff was saying, so I'm also a process engineer on a commercial manufacturing line and a product. And so one piece to add that I do is manufacturing support, and just kind of day-to-day firefighting if a process goes down, assisting in the fixing that and really troubleshooting, determining root cause and why it's not working like it was before.
No paperwork involved ever.
None, ever.
So, as I mentioned, I've been doing new product development for about 4 years now, and have seen a couple different lifespans as we get product through the regulatory process. So, when I first came on, we were doing a lot of testing. We'd kind of already written the test methods, and we were just executing the tests, compiling data, literally submitted a pile of paperwork about this tall to the FDA, got approval for the product, and now that we're starting the next phase of the same product, from the design engineering side, we're working to test and challenge the prototype devices that we get to determine if we're developing the specifications. So we know what the intended use is, and we're early enough on that we're still developing the specifications that in the next phase we'll test against. So I'll rotate from a design engineering role to process engineering as we set up the process to make that and then test against the specs.
Thank you. Could you guys discuss, for those of you who've had internships, could you discuss your internship experience, and would you recommend doing them?
Yes.
Yes.
We all had internships, I think.
Like at Gore?
Yeah, I think.
Or any company.
Oh.
Any company.
So I have one big point. As an electrical engineer, I was mad about power. Power was the thing. Power was amazing. I got an internship working in power. Power was not my thing. But I would have gone for a job had I not had that 3 months worth of experience. So yes, I am all for internships.
Should throw out a little caveat right now. Gore, in its hiring strategy right now, we try to pull predominantly from our intern pool. We do have student days, as many of you have probably already been through the interview process or screening process of student days, but the large majority of the candidates we bring through are actually intern students, and it's just kind of a shift that we're starting to do. That's not saying that if you didn't get an internship that you wouldn't get a position, but it's where we're going, and it's actually where a lot of different companies are going to. Because if you think about the virtue of an internship, it's a chance for you to test drive the company for so long. It's a time for the company to test drive you and also develop your skills. So internships should be, if you already haven't done them, should definitely be on the forefront of your mind. Now, caveat complete.
To take a step back, even basically summary, internships are vital to be competitive in the competitive marketplace today, either internships or undergraduate research. If you think about it, everyone in this room, at least within your own degree, is graduating with the same degree. There may be a slight difference in focus, slight difference in depth electives that you've taken, but all of you are graduating with the same degree, maybe a slight difference in GPA. What sets you apart, looking at one resume to the next, is the experience that you have outside of class. So it's either undergraduate research or internships from a technical perspective. I mean, I appreciate if you delivered the pizza for tonight, but that's not necessarily going to be a great conversation starter for a technical job for your first job out of school. So we need something technical that we can really dive into. So the internship, even if it's not a company that you see yourself necessarily going to full-time once you graduate, if you can find an internship opportunity anywhere and take that, it sets your resume apart and gives you real-world experience.
Now, looking kind of around the room, you can kind of gauge that some people have had internships and some people haven't. Just because you haven't had an internship doesn't mean it's the end of the world. You can still showcase certain things on your resume that might outshine somebody who has had an internship, especially if it's not within their field. So don't feel dejected if you haven't had one. What I'm trying to communicate, or what I think a lot of us are trying to communicate, is if you have the opportunity to get one, get one. Strive to get one. It'll only help you.
And club projects are excellent opportunities because anybody can sign up and say, hey, I want to help build the human-powered vehicle, and I'll work on the drivetrain or the braking system. And you put that on your resume as additional projects, that gives us 10 minutes worth of stuff to talk about. Assuming you actually did a significant chunk of work and understand braking mechanisms or something like that, that gives us something to talk about.
So yeah, do we want to start talking about our internships?
Yeah, could you please describe internships at Gore specifically?
Yeah, so I did 2 internships. I did one right when I graduated with my bachelor's. I was knowing I was going to grad school the next semester. So going into it, you know, I really didn't have a lot of, I guess I'd say, interest in medical devices. You know, I was really wanting to kind of go in like automotive, you know, big V8 engines or something like that, mechanical engineer. Like I was really gearing forward to that. And coming into it, I was like, you know, I don't really know what to expect, but I've heard so many great things about Gore. Let's give it a shot. And really about a weekend, I was like, okay, I want to work for Gore. I want to be in the medical industry. It was really a game changer for me. And just the experience that I got just working with, you know, several individuals, just being able to, like, what we call expand our lattice, getting to have personal relationships with people at work, just getting to know them really well, and just knowing, like, in that kind of environment and culture, it was incredible. And obviously that's what kept me going back. I got to do a lot of projects. I got to own things that were actually my own. It's not like I had someone sitting there saying like, oh yeah, we have this for you to do, just kind of get it done or whatever. It's like, no, here's these projects, you know, enterprise is at your disposal. Go ahead and use your degree. I was like, okay. So I had the freedom to reach out to people and, like I said, build those relationships and drive the projects on my own terms and how I see fit. Obviously, you know, you got to get input from a lot of people. There's so many smart people at Gore that help you get it done. But it was really nice having that ownership of projects. You really had a sense of pride. It was awesome.
So you're asking about Gore internships specifically, and so maybe I'll just give kind of a roundabout what we try to look for when we're developing a project for an intern. And really those projects are an engineer's project. It's something that somebody doesn't have time for. It could even be manufacturing oriented. It could also be time critical. It all really just depends on what the bandwidth that the team has. So it's not one of those types of environments where we say, you're an intern, go get the coffee or go get the donuts. It's not like that. You literally are working on an engineering project. And kind of what Greg was talking about, it is one of those things where here's your project. This is your baby. This is up for you to define what success is and then achieve that success. We'll, as sponsors, which is what Gore has for interns, we try to help you succeed in your internship, but it's ultimately the success is really defined by you. It is a very, very open project.
I will say that pretty much all of my internships, like the exception of half with one, was in a different position than I am right now. It was in design and automation, so designing machines and building them. And even though they were all three in the same sort of field, they were all very, very different. So that's, I don't know, one of the best things I got out of it was expanding my lattice, getting to know different people on the jobs, getting to know what they do, so that later when it came to where do I want my career to go, I kind of understood what the opportunities at this company were. So just something to keep in mind, I guess.
So I did not intern at Gore. I interned in the aerospace industry, and much like Jesse, I decided I didn't really like the way the aerospace industry kind of treated their employees and the way that it was structured. It didn't really fit me very well. But I do at Gore sponsor interns on our team, and I can say that the projects we try to give out are impactful type of projects. They're not just go file this paperwork, go sort this, go do that. We actually try to give you something that makes you feel empowered, makes you make engineering decisions, makes you present your ideas to a broader engineering board, and overall try and grow you as an engineer so that you can develop your talents and understand what you're actually getting into as a professional engineer. Also involves a decent amount of paperwork, because everything involves paperwork. So if you don't like paperwork, you're in the wrong field. But that's about all I've got on it.
So I did not intern at Gore. I did have an internship at a different company in the power industry, and just kind of echoing the interning to, it's not just them gaining experience, it's really learning what you want to do and what the industry is about. There's a lot of really strong lessons I learned there. And one thing I know is my capstone team was actually involved with the Gore Associates, and so kind of speaking from that, I've noticed that everything that they do, it's a lot of, on any project, whether it's intern or recently hired, or if you're working on a capstone project, they do put a lot of responsibility on the associate that's working on it, and really allow you to make decisions and show your knowledge and grow and really own the process, and encourage you to reach out to those that know a lot more and can help you out. So
I would say specific to Gore, but also applicable to any other internship, is just the time will fly. So it's a summer probably 10 to 13 week internship, and it's a quick pace. So hit the ground running and just realize that time flies. So.
Thank you. Could you guys describe any projects that you did outside of internships, or like things that you did outside of school, or that you've seen other people who worked at Gore do that helped them in the interview process of getting a job?
So when I was in IEEE, I brought in a 1985 Miss Pac-Man machine, and we kept it in IEEE for the longest period of time. Works, it would play, but it had problems with it, and so purposely brought it in so that students can work on it, they could showcase their skills. I took something that was a hobby of mine, something that I was closet passionate about, and then turned it into something that I could show in a technical, or and others can show on a technical resume. So a lot of the things, to maybe sidestep but somewhat answer your question, a lot of the things that I'm looking for on a resume is the one thing that a lot of you should be looking at when looking for a degree. Are you passionate about what you're studying? Are you trying to make your vocation your vacation? Or are you here because mom and dad were engineers? Nothing wrong with that. Are you here because you're trying to get a larger paycheck? There's nothing wrong with that. But what really drives me to look at a candidate is when they show passion, when they can show other projects that are on their resume that showcase that they are interested in their field and they're not just here to get a piece of paper. So anything can really be put on there. I mean, when interviewing mechanical engineers as an electrical engineer, if they don't have a lot on their resume, I ask, tell me about your car. Have you done any work on your car? And nobody thinks to put work that they've done on their car on their resume, but what does it show? It shows hands-on, shows troubleshooting, and shows technical. A lot of the things that some people look at when you're looking at a resume. So when you think about things to put on your resume, you should really be trying to emphasize your passion and your technical ability. And if you can somehow put both of those in there, I mean, to Jonathan's point a little earlier, it just gives so much more for that interviewer to kind of dig on, to kind of talk about and feel where you're at technically.
I think to add on to that, not only just projects outside of class, but maybe just kind of like what kind of job experience you have outside of industry. So I had 1 to 2 jobs throughout my entire college career, so ever since freshman year going on. And I worked at the plumbing, welding, and gas shop here at NAU, so I was the NAU welder for a couple of years. And that actually came out great to put on my resume, because there was a lot of times like where I'd just be like, oh, hey, something broke, you got to show up. So I show up with the welding trailer, and just that kind of mindset of like, oh, you got to troubleshoot this situation. And I was also the on-call maintenance manager, so if any of you guys have ever, I don't know, I had some crazy calls back in my time, but you know, like I'd show up and there would be water leaking from the roof, and they're like, oh, I don't know what happened. So trying to diagnose situations like that in the time being, that helped me put on my resume, just showing that, you know, that ability to have that technical know-how and to diagnose kind of on the spot. So something like that too. It doesn't just have to be a, you know, engineer's industry work experience. It can also be something aside from that, where it shows like, oh yeah, you know, this person knows what they're doing.
Back in my time. You want to tell me to get off your lawn too?
Oh gosh.
DJ, it's carpet, not grass.
Sorry.
So I can kind of add to that. One thing I also look for on a resume is ability to work within a team. You know, working in the clubs, working on team projects, working outside in teams. When you get into industry, you're always going to be working on a team with people. You're never just head down at your desk only doing things on your own. Because at the end of the day, somebody has to review what you're doing and sign off saying, yes, you know what you're talking about, yes, this is an acceptable project. So I really try and look for things on a resume that demonstrate your ability to work with a team, your ability to present your knowledge effectively, your ability to be inclusive in a group and be able to work with other people to design the best product that you can. It's not only about technical depth. There's a lot of other aspects to a resume that we look for.
But I would kind of build on the being passionate about a project. So kind of building off my own experience. I was fortunate enough to get involved with some undergraduate research with the NASA Space Grant. And I do know when I went through my interview process, that was something that I was able to bring up and show that this was something I was really excited about, really, you know, passionate about doing. And the advantage of having a project or project or extra curricular experience is, you know more about that than anyone else in the world, and so you can really, you know, highlight that you know what you're talking about if you're excited about it, and, you know, showcase your skill set. And so I would say extra projects that you're really into are great for, you know, separating yourself from the crowd.
The only thing I think that hasn't been mentioned yet is volunteering or humanitarian efforts that are technically focused. So if you're just looking for something else that none of the other things have really jived with you, Engineers Without Borders, I know somebody that I went to school with, graduated the same year, she went, I think, to India and did a big project on clean water for a whole village. And she could talk about that for hours, and it was just fascinating to see how she was able to use her high degree of technical knowledge to improve other people's lives. And so you kind of get that crossover of humanitarian work and technical knowledge, and that was dynamite.
So one thing that I didn't have projects when I was in college. I was working 3 jobs at a time, and it's okay to point to that in a nice way. Working too hard, man, don't love me. But yeah, it's not necessarily a game changer. One thing I also did was point to one of my jobs in particular and not leave that out, even though I thought maybe I should. I worked at David's Bridal for a little while, and a big point that made was, I'm an engineer. I also know how to work with different personalities under very high stress situations. So you can point to that stuff too and say, look, this is kind of what I'm trying to portray, and that can help.
Right, speed or challenging?
Easy. I mean, even with something like David's Bridal, you think about it, what's the design process? You have a customer who has needs, wants, you're trying to meet those needs. So Jess had to have specifications that she had to tailor something to, trim, length, waist, right? She had to meet those specifications. And then at the very end, it might seem a little loose, but what was the test? It had to fit the person. right? And so even in something like that, right, even if you think that it might not be relevant, you can tease a lot out of something like this, a job like that, to say that it does tie to engineering.
Moving on to a discussion more towards resumes, what do you look for in resumes as a Gore interviewer, and what do you not look for? What are your least favorite things to see on a resume?
1 page.
Only one page.
Only 1 page. It's
Please
always
describe what you want. And
One-sided too. Can't be
Yes.
so.
two-sided.
So that's a very good point. One thing that you guys should all realize with resumes is that there is some noise in the data. There are opinions out there on how resumes should be done.
No.
General general rules of thumb are to keep it to 1 page, unless you're writing something that is like a CV, right? An education or something that's more in the arts, right? That's a different type of resume. Our experience is kind of around this technical resume. So I was always taught that even if you're the CEO of a company, if it's a technical job, you should be able to put everything that you have for a resume on 1 page. That just means that the things that you're putting onto that page should stand out more. So I wanted to add that out there before we went any further. My biggest gripe with resumes is white space. White space to me shows that it tells more about the person than what it doesn't. That being said, that it means that you don't know how to speak to the skills that you have, that you probably do have experience, but we have to tease it out even more. There's nothing more discouraging as an interviewer, myself being an interviewer, to look at a resume and say, oh, I have to really bring a lot of this out, rather than it being already presented on the page. So white space, when I say that, I mean you should be able to fill portions of your resume up with relevant experience.
And not 18-point font.
No.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Single space 8-point font and 1/4-inch margins is also frustrating.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, don't put a block of text, but I don't know. There's a give and take, right?
Expanding on that, moving into interviews, what do you like to hear from someone in an interview, and what don't you like to hear about?
I can start, I guess. One of the great things, it's not what I like to hear, it's what I like to see. It's when I ask them a question, their eyes light up. It's drawing back to this passion. They're ready to talk about it. They can speak at depth of it. The last thing that I want to hear when I'm asking somebody a question during an interview is that they wrote down that they solved world hunger. But then when you ask them about it, they're like, well, I just did the project plan for solving world hunger. And it's like, it almost takes the wind out of your sails, and it almost kind of does a disservice to that person in a way to be able to speak about themselves. So I like to see that they're energized, they're energetic, they can speak to what they have on their resume, and that it's truthful.
One thing I really don't like when I'm interviewing someone is when I ask a question, what did you do on this project? And I get a response of, this is what we did on a project. I don't care what everybody else on your team did, I care what you did. So talk about what you did. Even if you just designed the CAD model for it, talk as much as you can about what you personally did to what you can talk about. Because I know it's a team effort, but I'm not trying to hire the team, I'm trying to hire you.
One thing to add so I haven't interviewed anyone, I just recently went through the interview process, is one thing I noticed is if you don't know something, that's okay. A lot of what the feeling I got, what people were looking for was the approach you took. How did you attempt to solve this? Admitting or realizing, figuring out what you don't know about a particular question and how you might be able to get that information, how you might be able to work around what you don't know, and highlighting what you do.
One thing that applies to both resumes and interviewing is to provide enough detail to kind of lay out. And it's challenging in a resume because you've got maybe 1 to 2 lines for each project or task that you did within a job. But tell me what the situation was, the task that you were given, the actions that you took, and then the measurable results of what actually happened. So if you can say, I took a look at this braking module for the human-powered vehicle, and it was size constrained, And so I had to redesign the braking module, and I created equivalent braking force and was able to reduce the size by 30%. That tells me everything I need to know about how you went through that and what you actually achieved. And you can get that into 1 to 2 lines on a resume, and then in the interview, we'll dive right into that, and you can tell me the whole story about how that happened.
And if you set it up that way to where what the situation was, what you did, and what the outcome was, interviewers just eat that up. It makes the interview go so much smoother for you and for them.
Because we'll get there one way or the other,
Yeah.
but if I don't have to pull it out, it's so much nicer.
Yeah.
You put me in a happier mood, and that's a good thing.
Plus, it gives you more time in the resume to keep talking about you rather than having these prying questions where you keep lagging on one question. You can get to more of your resume and talk to more about who you are and what you've done in your life to make us want to hire you.
Yep.
We had interviews today that went so well, it's like 15 minutes in, we knew they were a yes. We kept talking through the resume for another 15 minutes, and then last 15 minutes we just said, what questions do you have for us? And we just talked about Gore for 15 minutes because we knew right off the bat, this is a yes. So.
A lot of the time is when companies, and I'll speak from Gore, but I'll also speak from the startup experience. A lot of what companies are looking for isn't a right or wrong answer, believe it or not. I mean, it might be depending on a situational circumstance. But a lot of the times what we're trying to gauge is what is your thought process. And so if you feel you're struggling on a question or you somehow can't speak to something, feel free and vocalize. Talk your way through the question that you're trying to answer. Because then it gives the interviewer something to go off of rather than, I don't know. And don't get me wrong, I don't know is great. A wrong answer is worse. But walking through the process, think of it in terms of taking a test, right? You don't know the answer, you don't know how you're going to get there, but you're going to write down as much as you can and hope for partial credit. It's the same thing. It really is the same thing.
One thing to keep in mind, if you're ever in that weird situation where they asked you a question and you start talking and then you forgot what you were answering, it's better to say, can you please repeat the question? I would just want to make sure I answer it completely, than to keep talking and wonder at the end if you did or didn't, and then there's that awkward, okay.
Asking that question, did I answer your question, is perfectly valid. So is also asking at the end of the interview, how did I do?
Or any question at the end of the interview.
Yeah.
One big thing I've always been told is when they say, do you have any questions for us? Saying yes and having something to ask them shows you care. You're not just there to be there, and it makes you stand out.
I think one thing too with answering questions, like if you ever get a question and you just feel like you knock it out of the park, it's like, what's the, if you were to, I don't know, design something like this, how would you go about doing that? And you write out the equation that just fully solves it, and then you're like, okay, I'm done. And then they're like, okay, well, what else you do? Obviously, don't just stop there. They're looking for different approaches. They don't want to know, be like, yeah, that's the answer. That's pure and simple. Like, no, it's not that simple. They're trying to get at what your thought process is. So try and approach it from different angles. Make sure that there's not always one solution. So.
And that's the difference of industry problems versus school book problems. School book problems are already whittled down to just a certain number of variables. And when we're asking industry, real-life engineering problems, there's all the other factors that were conveniently left out of the equation. Like air resistance and dynamics or free fall. We never cared about that, but in real life that matters all the time. So when we ask the follow-up questions, we're asking about the other factors and the other variables that the textbook left out as insignificant.
Since every day for an engineer is never the same, could you please describe some of the tasks that you do over the course of a week at your job, or the ones that stand out the most to you that you feel describe your position?
Checking emails?
Checking emails. Getting coffee.
Yep.
Laying out review meetings.
Meetings, lots of meetings.
Yeah, lots of meetings. I mean, everybody here, the first thing they do when they walk in is check their email and check their calendar for the day. I know I try and answer all the emails that I can in the first bit, and then try and lay out what time I'm going to have devoted to meetings during the day, what meetings I need to get ready for, what meetings I have to give a report out to, and then plan all the other time that I have, try and plan what I'm going to work on, basically make my to-do list for the day before I can go home. And the last thing I always do at the end of the day is check my email again, and then check my calendar for the next day. But you'll spend And I probably spend all of Monday doing status reports, review meetings, and update meetings with my team, understanding what's going on in the manufacturing room, what's going on in the engineering world, what's going on in the regulatory world, trying to gauge where everybody's project's at, asking for help from people that you need. And then I usually have 2 or 3 days of just working on things, scheduling review, getting feedback that I need, and then Friday is kind of set up to figuring out what I have to do the next week, and getting ready for everything I have to do the next week.
So yeah, so definitely a lot of project management, right? There's a lot of time that you have to manage, not just yours, but also your team's time. There's a lot of project management that goes on in everything that we do, a lot of time management. And also, Jeff touched on a little bit, there's a lot of technical writing. If you thought, hey, I'm not a liberal arts major, I'm not an English major, I'm not going to write papers, wrong. You're going to write so much. And the amount that, and this is what I'll add to Jeff's, communication. The amount of communication you do as an engineer and the ability to coherently, it's kind of funny because I'm struggling, coherently transmit and a thought to somebody and have it decrypt and be received and them to understand it and decode what you're saying and really move forward. There's a lot of that has to happen, and it's a skill that you will innately pick up without choice. You're going to have to do it.
Well, the thing I'd like to add to that communication, you're not always talking to other engineers, so you need to be able to communicate with who you're communicating to. I talk to doctors, I talk to people on the floor building products, I talk to regulatory support associates, I talk to quality assurance associates, I talk to sales associates. So I'm never always just talking to a technical person. So if you start spouting off a bunch of technical lingo to somebody and they don't understand what you're saying, that was a failed communication. You didn't actually tell them what they needed to know. So really understanding your audience and what you have to say to have them understand it is a very key part of the communication at work.
I will say last week I did a lot of training because I am close to the end of my first year as a full-time person. So training will be a thing no matter where you go. But this week is my first free week in a while, and I did a series of firefighting, so I'm in charge of some machines that we use to build some stuff, and so when those break or when they're not working exactly wonderfully, I get to go in and figure out why. But on top of that, we're also trying to figure out if there's a better way to do something in our design that we've already decided on. And so right now, a lot of what I'm doing is hunting down specialists. So if there's this really cool technology that I don't necessarily know a whole lot about, I get to find out who to talk to and then go talk to them. And that's a lot of what I've been doing this week.
Yeah, I think for me, week to week, it kind of varies, but this week we've been in the midst of getting FDA IDE approval for one of our devices on the team that I'm working on. And when you're doing this review process with the FDA, it's very interactive. And they'll send you questions and be like, we need an answer in 3 hours. And sometimes it's like, hey, you referenced this product line that you guys worked on 15 years ago, and there's some hard copy stored down in the basement that you have to go dig up and find that data or something like that. So like, it's a lot of firefighting. It's a lot of fun because it's like, oh wait, we got to go answer this now. This can't wait. So it's rushing. It's fun. You get the whole team together and they're like, all right, well, let's get this done. So that was kind of going on this week. In previous weeks, sometimes it can be slower. I'm just working on reviewing documents for other associates, and then I was like, review meetings and emails. It's sometimes they can hit a little heavy, but that it definitely I wouldn't say it has its ups and downs. I'd say it's side to side on just like, am I going to be more process engineer this week working on this kind of stuff, or am I going to be more QE supporting submission stuff this week? So.
Could you guys please describe Gore a little more broadly and why you chose to work there and continue to do so?
I can start off. So being a double E, being prior military, having experience in a startup, a lot of those things almost made me a shoo-in for places like Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, EG&G, a lot of DoD type companies. It could have even put me in telecommunication. A lot of those companies are very hierarchical. You have a boss who's telling you what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and it has to be done when they say they do it. Gore was completely different. Ever since the first internship, even though it wasn't technical, my first internship, it was in quality assurance, the project was mine. It was given to me. I didn't have a boss. We tend to have leaders, not bosses, and I don't mean that loosely. I mean, we don't have somebody telling us what to do. We have somebody saying, how can I remove these roadblocks for you? So rather than looking at it as a top-down, it's more of an even playing field where you have people that are willing to help you get something done. That really kind of stuck out for me, and even though it wasn't electrical when I very first started off, my next internship ended up being more technology, and being able to mix that technology in with the Gore culture really drove me to stay at Gore. And so one of the other things that I'd love to showcase also about Gore and talk about is, even if you get assigned, we have a program called the Horizon Hire program, and basically it's a year program when you first get to Gore. It allows you to acclimate to the Gore culture, get trained, experience time with the team, but it lets you really adapt to the Gore culture. Even after that, you have the ability to look at other needs that are out there in the division and find out where you feel you can make the most impact. Gore has something they call the sweet spot. So as long as 3 things align, Gore will try to put you into your position that you want to be in. The 3 things are a business need. Obviously, we have to have the business need met, your passion, and your skill set. As long as those 3 things align, Gore will try to put you into a place that you want to be in. Case in point, I worked on a machine. I was validating a machine that was basically just a split die bonder. 2 heated plates come together, they heat some plastic together, and they bond it together. While I was working on that, I saw this other piece of technology in the corner. I was like, wow, that looks a lot like EMAG. Like, you have this big coil on the front of it, and it looks like you're pumping frequency and wattage through it. I want to know more about that. Turns out that after I started to work on that project, people started to say, oh no, he's really passionate about it. My other project kind of went away from my plate, and I started working on that project. Now, after I've started at Gore and been there for 3.5, almost 4 years, full-time, I own that process for the whole division. So anybody, all of our 9 buildings, if they are using this type of process, I'm the person that they go to for technology needs and troubleshooting. And so the ability to see a need, to define a need, and to be able to fill that need, Gore will allow you to have the freedom to move across that. And that type of lateral movement is phenomenal. Rather than being, for a double E, being stuck in a corner making op amps the rest of your life, or an ME tensiling something in a corner sitting by an instrument your whole life, right? The ability to move around based off of what you want to do and what you can do is amazing.
I will share some personal experience. I went to grad school down at ASU, studied digital signal processing for 2 years. Came out and was offered a fantastic job at Gore and a fantastic job at another company, I'll say, doing digital signal processing. They wanted me to be on that team, and in the interview we talked about stuff I had just studied, and it all felt very comfortable and familiar. I had pro-con lists going on my whiteboard at home for weeks, and I ended up at Gore doing stuff I didn't study, which, you know, it's mostly because it came down to a general sort of life happiness decision. I like the people, I like the company, I like this town, and so that's a big part of went into it. That being said, it's not absolutely 100% for everyone. If you work best coming into work, having a list of tasks, and that's what you're comfortable with, then maybe somewhere else is better. But if you're a passionate person and you know you're gonna do what you have to do to get something done, and you're gonna like the challenge and the exploration, then I think this would be a great place.
One thing I really enjoy is I work with a lot of very smart people, and whenever I ask them a question that I don't understand, they don't just tell me the what of the answer. They try and tell me the why of the answer. They try to make me understand the background behind my question, the background behind what the answer is. So at the end of it, I don't just have a yes or no answer. I have an understanding of what I've been asking, so I'm better off and I have more knowledge moving forward to make better decisions as I go through things. And on the other part is, you know, it was weird being there 1 year and people coming to me and asking questions on my expertise, and people really valuing what I thought and what I knew, as opposed to just like the hierarchical where your boss says it, that's law, that's it. I felt like from the get-go I had skills to bring, I had knowledge to bring, and people were willing to accept that knowledge, willing to accept those skills, and willing to use them in a way that was better for me, better for the company, and better for them overall.
Yeah, just really quick before we go on, there's something that also really drew me to Gore, and I'm sorry if I'm stealing your guys' thunder.
Steal away.
Steal away. Sometimes in hierarchy-based companies, people will have an idea, and they'll write their idea in their notebook, and my idea, nobody else's idea, right? A lot of the times, to what Jeff was saying, people at Gore really want to share their ideas. I've been called up on projects that I worked a couple years ago, and like, hey, can you tell me more about this? And I'll just give them everything that I had done, also with my improvement ideas on top of it, and I'll just share that open with them. Because that's kind of the nature that we live in. We don't want to hoard ideas. That's not what we're not about the one succeeding, we're about the all succeeding. And so that's something that I really fell in love with Gore anyway. Sorry if I stole that from you guys.
It's okay.
So I do know there's anytime you talk to a Gore associate, one thing they do bring up is the culture and the lattice structure, and that's because it's so different and so, in my view, pretty awesome. That's essentially why I was so interested in Gore, and then kind of building on that, the other really key piece that drew me to Gore was the emphasis they really put on work-life balance and really making the associates feel at home, and allowing them to take their own projects, drive their own success, and providing support for associates to really take control of a project and really see it through. So I think the culture was the biggest thing that drew me to Gore, and just the emphasis that you can tell that they cared about the associates and the people that you go to work with every day. So, and that sense of community was definitely a big part.
I'd say for me, obviously I was interested in Gore because of location, came up here for school and loved it and wanted to stay, and then once I got in there and experienced it, just the enjoyment of going to work and knowing I'm making a difference and enjoying the work environment, the people I was working with, the team-based environment, made me stay.
All right, I'd like to open the floor. Do any of you have any questions?
So I know most of you have been out of school for 2-3 years. So thinking back to school, what courses did you guys take that you feel helped you most going into Gore and what you guys do?
Dr. Becker's.
Stats, public speaking, and technical writing.
Got the joke right in there, Jeff.
Oh yes.
It's not it, but really.
The basic stats here isn't going to help you a whole lot for Gore. We'll teach you stats. I would say Dr. Becker still teaches it, biomaterials or biomechanics. That one was pretty awesome. That helped me a lot as far as like in the clinical setting when you're designing the device and kind of the response, the healing process and stuff like that, getting to kind of know that going in. So, yeah.
And broadly, if you're interested in medical, he's a fantastic resource. So.
All of the multidiscipline classes.
Which they have none of anymore.
What?
The rumor is.
EGR 186.
Just 186. There's no more.
Hey, we were just there.
Yeah, there's no more combined 286 or 286.
It's,
Well, then 186.
Yeah.
Yikes. I will say just the design classes in general. I happen to be a big fan of implementing the design process in almost everything I try to do daily. What are the customer's needs? How do I drive specifications? How do I test specifications? Well, okay, capstone. Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking like capstone.
No, it's true. I mean, but you did the same thing in.
It's beautiful, capstone.
Yeah.
I preferred second semester capstone because they taught you how to communicate, they taught you how to write, they taught you how to give presentations in front of groups of people, because that's a lot of what you do at Gore. Like you set a meeting with 4 people and you are pitching your idea to them and hoping that they understand and they agree with you, or if they don't, that you can find a way around it. But I can say that standing in front of the video camera while they were recording us doing presentations in Capstone was one of the biggest things of going, oh, I really have to do this. I can't just sit at a cubicle and send emails.
Well, and also working with, the thing I like best about Capstone was it's a group project, but it's not a 2-week group project. You have to work with these people for a year. And some of them were very difficult to work with.
I was going to say longer than a year in some cases.
Yeah, I think that was really beneficial.
For the mechanical engineers, ME 495 gives you some really good experience in lab processes, testing, setting up specifications, testing against them, and writing a report. So take that one seriously, and it's some great experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to say I TA'd for that lab, and I will second that one. That one is a very important one. It's much simpler than it's made out to be, but yeah, that one has a lot of good lessons in it. So.
Alright. Any other questions?
Yeah. Are there any kind of differences for people coming in with a master's degree rather than a bachelor's?
Right.
Jess.
As far as what exactly? What
I
kind
mean,
of
I guess what kind of work you start off doing?
Not really. It's Gore. I mean, you have an engineering degree, and you know everyone here is very knowledgeable. So, no, you're pretty much tasked with all the kind of same things. I guess the one thing that would be different is maybe the person with master's. I'm gonna say no. No, there's no difference.
I'm gonna contradict you slightly. Just because recruiting this year, we're consciously slating some of the master's students a little bit more toward design or reliability, early career engineering.
Yeah.
That's
And it's really around the project-based exposure and then the ability to define a problem and then really get towards testing the problem. And so there's a lot, no offense to anybody who's a stats major, but with master students there's a lot more stats emphasis.
But that's, if you would have asked me a year ago, I would have said there's no difference. So this year, there's a slight difference. I don't know if that's a new thing going forward or just an oddball for this year. But
I will say, Gore aside, masters in some cases get you straight into R&D if a company is running R&D. Same with PhD. Gore has a little bit of different approach on that. Just because you didn't get a master's or a PhD does not mean that you can't work in R&D. Gore takes a little different of approach, and it's based around skill set. It's based on the aptitude. That being said, I would not discourage a master's. Do you guys, being at Gore, do you guys regret doing your master's?
No, and because I think it's helped me set up success for Gore as far as like, you know, it's helped improve my skill sets as far as like diving deep into some technical problem. And, you know, it's not like it's just purely defined for you in some undergrad class. It's like, you know, here's a project that no one's ever worked on before. You need to go research it, and you need to go understand it, and you need to own it. And doing that really helped me dive right into Gore and be like, okay, here we go. So I think it really helped me in that sense. So absolutely, I think I'm glad I did it.
And the answer, the question that I get asked a lot is, should I get a master's or would you recommend it? So even if you don't end up going into the field, there are all those awesome opportunities to just dive deeper into things, work harder so you know what hard work, like you think you're working hard now. But one of the big things I can say now is I'm never going to question, should I go back to school? I'm good.
I saw you going somewhere completely else, and I just, nope.
You don't want to be Dr. Randolph?
No, I wanted to, but just for the name. Turns out it's probably not worth it.
Was there another question?
Another question?
Would you guys like suggest if I like take more like computer science languages classes? Would that, even though I'm like a PE major, but would you suggest like taking more languages like Java or like C? Would that be beneficial for like your future?
So you're talking to two EEs.
Maybe like open to the floor, but like specifically EE majors.
Sure.
Yeah.
You're talking to two EEs who took completely different paths. So I went more power. Jess went more DSP, digital signal processing.
I would say yes. Not necessarily specifically for Gore, but going to career fairs and interviews for other companies in general, that was something that usually came up.
Yeah.
So I didn't do Java or Python. I feel like it would have been a good thing to speak about.
So even outside of Gore, the more languages you have, the better. Means that you're easy to plug in and play with whatever they have going on. So if you think about it, if you are looking to get into some sort of programming vocation, it makes sense just to kind of expand your breadth of languages that you're used to using. Just off the top of my head, I know Gore uses C#, XML. We use, I would say that we use predominantly more assembly languages more than structured ones, but we do have some structured ones. We also use things that aren't taught here. We use ladder logic as well too. And so if you have the opportunity to expose yourself to ladder logic, do try to do so.
Okay, question on top of that, what would you say if timing-wise your option was learn some more languages or do an applicable project with what you got?
Me being the interviewer, project, hands down.
All in favor of project? Aye. Ayes have it. I can tell you as a mechanical, in the 286 design classes, I got thrown into doing all the programming because we didn't have an EE on the team. I thought at the time it was probably the most dreadful thing I ever had to do because I had to learn from YouTube and Scratch and Google how to program Arduino units. I can tell you it was probably the best thing I ever did because at Gore now I can talk to electrical engineers, I can talk to controls engineers, and I can understand the logic that they're programming into a piece of equipment to help understand what the equipment is doing, what do we need the equipment to do, and kind of how to troubleshoot pseudo. Like, I'm not the person like coding everything, but I have enough of an understanding to talk to them, you know, intelligibly and actually understand what's going on. So that's one thing that's really helped me at Gore, is just having that broad language and being able to communicate with different people because I have that background.
To more directly answer your question, if you're trying to go to a specific company who is really all about programming languages, it's worth reaching out to them. Many companies have ways that you can reach out to them, some sort of recruiting email or contact info, and say, hey, you know, I'm trying to focus in you know, a certain computer languages. Is there a certain one based off of what you work on that would be more applicable? And I think it's completely fair to ask. Hopefully they give you and they provide you with an answer. If not, you're going to have to use LinkedIn or something to try to get that answer. I know that sounds a little cop-out-ish, but if you really want to focus on the language rather than a project, that's completely your decision. One may end up helping you more directly than the other.
Kind of broad answer as well is go to career fairs every chance you get. Go to as many career fairs, talk to as many people as you can. Even if it doesn't seem directly related, you may get a little piece of information that proves valuable, somewhat unrelated, and look back later and like, yeah, that was a good suggestion. So it's just because a lot of times companies send real engineers to the career fairs. It's not just a HR hiring manager. So you can really ask what their days look like. And that's a great type of question to ask someone at a career fair who's actually in that field, works for the company that you might be interested in. So much face time with companies and recruiters as you can possibly get. Yeah.
So just piggybacking off that question, in this room there's a handful of computer science students from ACM, and what opportunities could Gore provide for these individuals career-wise? If you guys know.
That's a good question. I would see, we have seen some CSs. Predominantly a lot of our design and automation are EEs. Trying to, controls, yeah. So I would be more towards controls. So it'd be more towards machine design and then controls programming. We have some data systems that are in Gore too that I can easily see a CS playing into. You know, data acquisition systems, a lot of push-pull, maybe even pipeline structure, depending on how things are running. Let me say that the caveat is, just because if we don't seem to say that CSs aren't in Gore, that doesn't mean they're not. I know 5 off the top of my head who could easily program circles around most of us. within our software group. And they're not just about designing the code and software. There's this relationship between code and our regulated environment. And they are the software group. They run the software quality assurance group. Unknown if they're CSs, but I could definitely see a CS playing in something like that.
We just hired one for our software quality assurance.
So there you go. A data point.
He has an extensive background in Allen Bradley programming and control software.
So PLCs, yeah.
Yeah, PLCs.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you. And then on top of that, what languages are you guys mainly developing in? Like you said, you hired one for.
Yeah, so like I said, C#, Viz Basic, XML, PLC. There's a lot of machine code. So things that may be like this pseudo, not quite C area. Some of it is directly pulling from data registers. That's a lot where design and automation kind of really functions.
All right, if that's the last of the questions, then I think we should start the resume workshop
Sure.
portion of this. So if you guys want to kind of break up into groups or lines maybe and talk to a representative, bring your resume up and get some feedback.
Spread out
So here's what we'll do just really quick. In the interest of time and the interest of a lot of people, I know one of